Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we've got a very special guest, Pi Lanningham from the project SundaeSwap in the Cardano ecosystem. So really excited to chat about today. Welcome. Thank you for being here, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I guess the first order of business would be your name, Pi. Super cool. Where did that come from? Like, how did you get that name?
Yeah, so that is my real name.
Nice,
It's Pi like the number.
nice.
Basically, back in middle school, I was really bored in math class, and I was kind of looking around the room, and around the edge of the room, there was a trim that was the digits of pi, and I started
Yeah.
memorizing them. And then I moved from Virginia down to Florida, and I was the
Hmm.
new kid in school. And so everybody kind of needed a thing to call me, and they were like, "Oh yeah, have you met that kid who knows pi?" And it one day someone just shortened it to "Hey, I'd like to introduce you all to Pi." Became my nickname for many years, and my mom started calling me Pi. When I graduated, they said Pi Lanningham, and so one year I was like, "Why don't I just get it changed?"
There you
And so
go.
I got it changed a couple years ago, so it is my legal name.
That's badass. Yeah. I mean, and nothing more befitting to, the burgeoning space of DeFi than a very mathy name, right?
Yeah. No, I like to tell people, and I've said this on past interviews. I am a mathematician by passion and a programmer by trade.
It's the best way to go, honestly. And you have the foundations of programming all in mathematics and just the way you solve problems. So love that. And speaking of that, I would love to know how you got into the space, the crypto space, broadly, and then we'll talk about SundaeSwap and sort of see where things go from there.
Yeah. So I started programming when I was pretty young. I
Hmm.
was looking to make video games to pay for an MIT tuition. And so my uncle, who teaches programming at the
Hmm.
University of Utah, gave me a compiler and said, have at it. And so I started programming when I was 9. Um, and then back in 2009, 2010 era, the Bitcoin white paper got slash dotted. And
Hmm.
I remember reading it and I was like, wow, this is a really cool algorithmic solution to this problem.
Yep.
And, I hung out on the Bitcoin Talk forums for a little while and um, mined, a couple blocks on my laptop that was a graduation gift from my
Nice.
high school graduation and, 150 Bitcoin. Unfortunately, I lost the wallet for that. So
There we go. That's what
that made me a little
happens.
bit bitter about crypto for a little while.
Hmm.
And so was doing other things for a couple of years, but then back in 2017, I came back into it, and the reason I came back into it was largely Cardano.
Hmm.
Um, there are there are when I read that first white paper, it created a very specific emotional feeling in me.
Hmm.
Um, beyond just thinking it was cool, there was like a certain like, oh, I'm here at the start of something. And
Yeah.
there's only two crypto projects that have given me that same feeling since. One was Ethereum, and I could have bought a bunch of Ethereum at something like somewhere between $4 and $8,
Yeah.
and I didn't because I was still bitter about crypto. And so by the time Cardano came around, I had learned to recognize that feeling,
Yeah.
and I was like, I have come to terms with that past, and I really went all in, and I've been following Cardano ever since. Was really looking for a way to contribute to the space. I played around back in 2017 with um, the um, like a bot that would monitor the price on a bunch of different exchanges and alert
Hmm.
you if it kind of hit certain thresholds. I played around with an algorithmic trading bot last year during the pandemic.
Yep.
Um, and I'm just honestly, I'm not much of an entrepreneur. I don't um, come up with the ideas and know kind of how to execute on them. And so when Mateen and Artem approached me to join SundaeSwap the Dex, and they had already
Hmm.
solved what to me was one of the hardest problems, which is getting a community excited about it.
Yeah.
I was very excited about that project, and so I've been working on that and working with them ever since. And that's probably a good spot to segue into talking about what SundaeSwap is. Does
Please
that
do.
sound good?
Make my job easy.
Yeah. So SundaeSwap is a project that we're building that is what's called a DEX, and DEX stands for Decentralized Exchange. A lot of your audience might be familiar with what that means, but for those who aren't, it serves the same role that something like the New York Stock Exchange or Coinbase or Binance might, where it lets parties come and exchange two tokens, one for the other. The difference is that if it's designed correctly, there is no central authority that can kind of shut it down or exfiltrate funds or anything like that, right? So what we are trying to do is build a piece of software and put it out in the world and let it become its own living entity that, we help facilitate or we kind of provide easy access to, but lives out there on its own, completely independent of us. So that's really our vision for SundaeSwap.
Amazing. Well, first of all, Pi, your story is great, right? It's the thing I appreciate the most is looking back and saying Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, having sort of a love for all of them, or like at least a recognition, like these things are big, and these are big changes in paradigm for computing, but also for exchange of value. And I think that the rest of the community, the broader community in crypto, should take that approach of just admiring the achievements that have been made to date, while of course recognizing the ones they like the best. And for SundaeSwap too, you look at this as an opportunity to bring what largely has made Ethereum such a really rich ecosystem happen in the Cardano world. I think the fundamental engine behind what's happened with Ethereum lately has been that composability and the ability for people to get access to different tokens without having to wait for them to come to a centralized exchange in their locality.
Yeah, and you say it's been an incredibly rich ecosystem, but a statistic that I heard that I didn't bother to double check, so I don't know if this is true, but
yeah,
I saw somebody say that less than 2% of all Ethereum wallets had interacted with DeFi in any way, and DeFi is decentralized finance, like DEXs and things like that. Which means that you describe it as rich because it has been incredibly exciting and incredibly profitable for some people, but it's really only just getting started. And so I'm really excited about the bringing that to the Cardano space and bringing kind of some of our own innovations that we've come up with over the last month or so.
Well, let's talk about that. I would love to hear about the SundaeSwap approach to building a DEX, and maybe folks that are watching might have an understanding of some of the offerings that exist in the Ethereum world, maybe not, but just from that perspective, at a high level, what are some of the things that really went into the design of SundaeSwap that really set it apart from the rest?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. And to some extent, I'm going to have to be a little bit careful because there's a lot of details that we haven't finalized or that we're not ready to talk about. So I can kind of
pre-launch.
I don't want to either overcommit or give up some of the exciting stuff for us to announce later.
No problem.
But in general, it's not really any secret that we are a relatively new team when you look at our expertise. We have a lot of expertise in building software, and in we have a lot of advisory expertise and a lot of really high caliber expertise in that way. But a lot of us are relatively new when you look at some of the other big projects in terms of the DeFi space. And so we're really trying to focus on not getting ahead of our skis and taking on more than we're comfortable with. And so for launch, we're really just focusing on that core feature that I talked about, which is the ability for separate parties to swap tokens. And so that will work through one of a number of different mechanisms. We're investigating a couple. There is a front runner right now, one that we think is probably going to be the one that wins out. And that is going to be built kind of with heavy inspiration from the Uniswap style model, the constant product liquidity pool. And so a brief description of that, in a Uniswap style automated market maker, people come to the market and they say, I have some liquidity and I want to earn some interest rate on that. And they deposit that into a smart contract. They say, I'm going to give you 1 Bitcoin and 10 Ethereum, for example. And in return, they get some token that represents a percentage ownership of that pool. So if that 1 Bitcoin is joining 9 other Bitcoin, and that 10 Ethereum is joining 90 other Ethereum, then you have 10% ownership of that pool. And you can exchange those tokens to withdraw your 10%. And somebody else can come along and say, well, I want to swap Bitcoin for Ethereum. So they deposit only Bitcoin and they withdraw only Ethereum. And the amount that they withdraw is determined by the ratio of assets in the pool, and along with kind of some fancy math to make sure that the price stays fair and evolves over time in ways that probably aren't worth me diving into detail on in this venue. But we do have a great white paper up that explains some of these details.
Great.
But what that allows you to do is exchange one asset for another using the assets that other people have provided as liquidity. And in return, a small portion of the fees is carved off and kept in the pool. And in that way, the pool size is growing over time as these swaps are happening. And so the people who deposited liquidity, because they have a percentage ownership, they end up withdrawing more assets at the end than they put in. And so it has all the properties of a market in the sense that there is a price, you can trade, you can buy and sell 2 different assets. But instead of the fees going to some central party, they're shared by the people who are quote unquote making the market in the first place. And so that's the core model that we're looking at. And then we have ways to improve on the slippage compared to what other DEXs are doing. We have ways to increase the throughput, like above what kind of a naive model would have. We have, we're investigating kind of on the longer horizon things like direct swaps, where parties can directly swap their assets without having to go through the pool if you've kind of prearranged ahead of time with somebody, or things like limit orders or options and things like that. We're investigating how those would fit into this model. And let me see, is there anything else that I want to talk about? We do have a couple other features. The last one that I'll mention is we're going to have some notion of kind of yield farming, which is this property on other DEXs where they want to incentivize liquidity providers to keep their liquidity in the pool. And so they will often allow you to earn kind of an extra income on top of that for keeping your liquidity, right? You get the fees and you get this extra incentive. And so we're looking at ways that we can build that into the protocol as well.
Amazing. Pi, you have a real talent for being a technical person and explaining stuff in a way that people will understand, which I appreciate. And that's like the whole goal of this channel. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate
thank you. All my friends tell me that someday I will end up being a math teacher because I like explaining things.
we need people like that to teach math in a way that people can get excited about. I think many people lack that gift to do that. So thank you for that. What I wanted to kind of pivot to, right, is with all of the features that you just described as a backdrop and an understanding that this is a great way for people to invest in the Cardano ecosystem in general and the tokens that live within it to earn a little bit on the side as well. But what about Cardano from your perspective, from the team's perspective, is the reason why you chose to go with Cardano? Like, what are some of the properties that really make it a unique place to build a DEX, for example?
Sure. Yeah. And it really is an intentional choice for us to do that because in the early days of the project, we thought about launching on another chain, on the Binance Smart Chain, and then bridging over to Cardano when smart contracts were ready. And, as we kind of leveled up our technical talent on the project, and as we looked at it, we realized that the complexities of doing that bridge where we would kind of migrate all of our users from one chain to another wasn't really worth it. And we really wanted to be on the Cardano blockchain in the long term. So why not just build directly for the Cardano blockchain? And so there are a number of qualities that Cardano has that make it really attractive for that. ranging from the cynical to the kind of enlightened. The
Mm-hmm.
most cynical one is that it's a new space, meaning that there's not competition that we have to bowl over.
Yeah.
And so Mateen and Artem saw the kind of the market niche and the precise timing that would allow us to kind of really capitalize on that. And they went and built a community around it, and it has just been really overwhelming. And so they, in that respects, they are kind of geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
From a more technical sense, there are two main reasons that get me excited. One
Mm-hmm.
is the lower fees that come with Cardano. So
Mm-hmm.
because this is going to get a little bit technical, so I
That's
apologize.
okay.
But
That's what I like.
because of the way that Cardano has built its transaction model
Mm-hmm.
with UTXOs, and because of the fact that you don't have access to look at the entire blockchain state. You can
Mm-hmm.
only look at kind of what's going into your transaction. That fundamentally does two things. One, it cuts down on the transaction fees for any given operation,
Mm-hmm.
because the validators that are validating the transactions have to interact with less memory. They
Mm-hmm.
can kind of just parallelize the validation of the transactions and just focus on validating each one independently, which means that we don't have to pay as much fees to the validators to incentivize them to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it means that the transaction can be validated before you ever even submit it to the chain. So like one thing that happens on Ethereum a lot is you will submit your transaction and it will run, and then it may or may not succeed, and if it fails, you're out on the gas fees anyway.
Yeah.
And that theoretically can still happen on Cardano if you kind of intentionally submit a bad transaction just to
Yes.
disincentivize people. But in principle, you should know before you submit your transaction or not whether it's going to validate. And so that also brings the costs of operating on the Cardano blockchain down a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
so those lower fees mean a more efficient market, meaning that we can do higher volume and have higher liquidity, provided that there's interest in that. But like from a technical level, it supports much higher volume and liquidity, which is what you want out of a healthy DEX, right?
Right.
And so that's one reason, is the lower fees. The second reason is and I have to be careful how I say this because there's a lot of superstition around this that I don't want to reinforce. The UTXO model, or EUTXO model technically, that Cardano operates on has built into it better guarantees about exploits that can happen within the blockchain or within the transaction. And that's not a magic bullet. It doesn't prevent all hacks, and there will still probably be some big scandal on the Cardano blockchain.
Yes, inevitably.
But it does make it a lot easier to reason about and to secure the protocols that you're trying to build. And so that makes it really attractive to me, because the last thing that I want on my conscience is some big hack that exfiltrates millions of people's hard-earned money out of a protocol that I was ultimately responsible for.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing, right? It's people ask me a lot about why I really like Cardano, and often you hear online that the diatribe about towards Cardano is I don't know any tech people who like Cardano, which is just markedly false, right? It's an echo chamber statement. I come from a tech background, programming background, what have you. I've always thought that Cardano is a really interesting experiment, and one that has become a really well researched, academic focused product now, a true protocol that does things very differently than what we have in Ethereum, which is a really good thing. And so from based on what you're saying, right, this is something that I've been waiting for a long time, to talk to people who have been building in this space to talk about really what's attractive about building in this very, very different world compared to what we're all used to, which is the Ethereum world. Most of the stuff that I've had the chance to work on has been in the Ethereum world, and that's what I came up in. And it's very different, and it's fantastic to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I would like to sort of get people to understand maybe is that what SundaeSwap is building and what other projects in the Cardano space are building is the first batch of applications that are going to live in this brand new paradigm. And coming towards that as users, the big focus should be, give projects like SundaeSwap the opportunity to thrive by being ready on day one to just experiment and to tinker and to try things out. I think is the biggest call to action that I can make to folks that are watching. And so the kind of where I wanted to go from here is maybe from here where we are end of June 2021, we're in the middle of this Alonzo hard fork sort of testing phase, private test nets right now. What's the plan for SundaeSwap? Is there going to be some involvement in the public testnet phase?
Yeah, we are definitely planning on doing that. We want to run our protocols or early versions of our protocols on the testnet and involve the community. We plan to even run like bug bounty programs on the testnet, similar, in spirit to the incentivized testnet that Cardano did. For those who don't know, in the early days of Cardano, when they ran their testnet and they needed people to come and run stake pools, which is not an easy or cheap operation, Cardano said, well, any ADA that you earn on this kind of incentivized testnet, we will redeem and pay you on the mainnet. And so we're not going to do something exactly like that because it doesn't really kind of fit with our model, but we are going to run kind of promotions and programs where we run big tests on the testnet and say, if somebody can find a bug, we have this bounty out, right? So that's kind of one of our plans right now that we would be really excited to do. And the rest of my team will want me to say that's not necessarily a commitment to do those things. Things change as we're doing. And one of the frustrating things for us has been this fundamental tension between transparency, where we want to tell you about what we're doing, and the messiness of running a business, where sometimes it just kind of isn't in the cards to do that or things like that. So we would really like to do a bug bounty program, but that may not work out. But yeah, so we plan to, over the last 2 to 3 weeks, we have been really ramping up on building out our contracts. And it's been really exciting to see that kind of start to come together. We are kind of looking to do some testnet runs of that, potentially with community involvement. And then, we're aiming for being ready and audited and formally verified with the mainnet launch. That's a very, very ambitious and aggressive timeline. So as I did in previous interviews, and as I will do going forward, that comes with the heaviest of disclaimers. So please have some understanding if that does slip. And I would much rather not launch on day one than launch a buggy product and lose a bunch of people's money, right? And so the security and reliability and confidence in that protocol will always come first for me. But that is what we are aiming for, is that launch with mainnet.
Yeah, you're going to trust DeFi protocols and contracts with millions. Hopefully you get that type of adoption early on, millions of dollars worth of crypto assets. Then you want to have as many assurances as possible, knowing nothing is unpenetrable and unhackable, that you are operating in a safe way. And so good software takes time, similar to the launch of smart contracts everyone's been impatient about. I'd rather it be as well done as possible than rushed. And so I think that is something to live by, particularly in the world of software that is effectively unupgradable in many ways. Yes. So with that, first of all, the last thing I wanted to do is sort of give an opportunity to sort of shout out places where folks can connect with you, the rest of the team, social media wise, where folks can come and ask questions. Of course, if you have questions and you're watching, ask them in the comments. I can talk to Pi or the rest of the SundaeSwap team, get you as many answers as I can. But where can folks find you on social media?
Yeah, the best place right now is our Discord.
Okay.
I have spent many a night um, just answering people's questions directly there in the Discord. Uh, I'm sure you'll make sure there's a link
I'll
in
link
your
it up.
description for that.
Yep.
Less so lately. I've kind of been a little bit more absent as I've been
Heads
heads
down.
down focusing on
Yeah.
building the protocol. And to all of our loyal community members, I hope you forgive me for that. I know that my kind of willingness to answer people's question was a big thing that excited people early on. I promise that I will set aside some time to get back to that. But you know, it's been crazy the amount of time that you know, running and building this DEX has been taking up. The second place to reach out to us is on Twitter. We're SundaeSwap on Twitter, and we, you know, will kind of run little promotional games just to kind of keep the community involved, and things like we did an art contest recently, like a fan art contest, and we gave out $100 worth of ADA across 3 winners. So, you know, it's a small thing, and a lot of people kind of complained about that, but it's community involvement and community engagement is really important for a project like this, because on day one, if we don't have any liquidity and we don't have anybody who knows about or wants to use our project, it's not very exciting, right? Like the excitement from a DEX comes from high liquidity, so that people who want to trade can do so efficiently, and high volume, so that people providing liquidity can, you know, earn a good return on their investment. So you know, a lot of people have given us flack for that, but it's a really important part of the DEX that we're building. And so we'll be kind of ramping that up, doing more and more stuff like that on our Twitter as we get closer to launch. In addition to that, we have a Reddit and things like that. But like the 2 ones that I would point people towards are our Discord and our Twitter.
Amazing. Definitely. Those will be linked up in the description below, folks. Please do check that out. Pi, I mean this genuinely. This was a fantastic conversation. Thank you for coming and spending the time to explain this, folks, to everyone, and share, you know, your story and about SundaeSwap. We'll definitely do this again. I would love to do. Maybe we can get some folks on the channel to watch a more tech deep dive type of session, you and me, right? I think we could have a really good conversation there.
Yeah, I'd love to do one where I bust out a whiteboard and you know, do a classic whiteboard video.
Perfect.
Around the time that we're ready to release more details about the operation of the DEX, maybe.
Count it. Let's do it.
Thanks for having me on. It was really great talking to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a pleasure. Great to meet you. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for taking the time. If you haven't already, please do go check out SundaeSwap online. Please do subscribe to the channel. And until next time, folks, cheers.